I was a bit of a rebel when I was a teenager. I was living for myself. I didn't care much about my parents. I did things as I pleased. Stayed out late with friends. May mga panahon na hindi ako umuwi ng ilang araw. And this was during the time when we didn't have mobile phones and there was no way to send my mother information on where I was at any time. I didn't have a care in the world. I didn't think about the future at all. Wala akong pakialam sa mundo. My biggest issues were existential. Sino ako? Who am I? What am I here for? What's my purpose? But when I turned 21, many things about me changed. I had to start thinking about what I was going to do with my life. My biggest questions changed from existential to very, very practical. Where will I get my next source of income? How can I make my remaining funds last a few more days? Or can my father help me find a job? Things like that. I had to start earning serious money. After college, naturally, I no longer received any allowance from my parents. So I had to earn my keep. So after a rocky start, some trial and error, soon I was on my way to pursuing a marketing career. And the rest is history. I finally became an adult. A lot of changes happened to us when we transitioned from being teenagers to officially becoming adults. There are physiological changes, of course. Our bodies are flooded with hormones that we begin having feelings and urges that we're not used to. These urges tend to go wild during teenage years, but by adulthood, we learn to keep them within some level of control. There are also changes on how the mind works. During the teenage years, our thinking becomes more abstract, much more like problem solving, much more systematic. As teenagers, we begin to develop very idealistic and sometimes unrealistic views. But by the time we reach adulthood, our pattern of thinking starts getting more practical and realistic. During our teenage years, we were still developing our identities and we were very susceptible to peer pressure. By the time we reach adulthood, we've begun defining who we are and we begin to stand on our own. Our spiritual lives mature as well. There are marked changes as people pass from being spiritual children into spiritual adults. And so will our full human existence. We will pass on from imperfect, sinful people into perfected, resurrected people of God. This is what we get from this passage from the Apostle Paul in his letter to the Corinthians. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. The Bible tells us that a time will come when Jesus will return from heaven and he will transform everything into a new heaven and a new earth. In this particular passage, the Apostle Paul talks about the radical change that a follower of Jesus goes through when the Lord returns. The change is like when one is transformed from a child into an adult. You remain yourself. You do not become a different person when you grow up, but you undergo very profound changes. You can no longer go back to what you were before. When you've become an adult, you leave behind your childish ways. So, those of you who may already be considered adults, live up to your age. Unawain mo na hindi ikaw ang sentro ng mundo. Be more considerate of others. Be more deliberate in your decisions and actions. Hindi na pwede yung padalos-dalos ang pag-iisip at pagkilos. Think, respond, and act like the mature individuals that you are. Ito na yung tamang panahon para sa iyo. As we pass on from being children and adolescent into becoming mature adults, always remember, faith matters too.